Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. Today we're going to discuss the wonderful thing which is being a U.S. green card holder. So this is a little bit different than being a U.S. citizen. I'm going to talk specifically about that because I've been having some calls with people who weren't aware of some of these things, and it can be kind of a bad thing. But on the other hand, it could inform, maybe some decisions in a direction that you wouldn't normally take. And so it's worth understanding. So today we're going to talk about U.S. green card holders and specifically their tax consequences and possible exit tax consequences. Okay, so let's dive in. Before we do that, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the all notifications so you don't miss out on any of our videos. If you'd like more help with international tax optimization, asset protection, forming companies, opening bank accounts, getting residency in other countries, getting citizenship in other countries, we can help you with both the strategy and the execution. Please reach out to me. You can book a call, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer. There's a link in the description below. Or you can send a message to our websites, offshorecitizen.net or offshorecapitalist.com. All right. So basically, what we're talking about here is U.S. permanent residents, essentially. People given permanent residency status, green card holders. Who have permanent residence. Now, note there's a little bit of a difference between long-term residents and permanent residents, and there's a little bit of overlap in what I'm going to talk about here, in particular related to expatriation, because kind of bizarrely, you have to actually expatriate as a U.S. permanent resident, which is a little bit different than some other places. I guess you have to get out of the tax system in some cases in other countries as well. But anyway, so how does this work? So first of all, it's worth noting that if this is your status, you have essentially the same tax obligations as Americans, okay? What does this mean? This means that for the most part, you're taxed on your worldwide income based on that status, even if you live abroad. Now, there is an exception to that, which is different from US citizens, which is that you could fall under an applicable tax treaty with another country, and that could exempt you if you make an appropriate filing with the IRS. So there's some things there that it's really good to know about that, because you may want to be in a situation where you say, hey, I'm going to opt out of this whole tax thing because I'm in a country where there's a tax treaty. Now the problem is the US doesn't actually have a very good network of tax treaties. Kind of surprising for a country like the US, but yeah, their network is pretty, it's not bad, but it's certainly not great. So that may inform, if you're somebody who is a U.S. permanent resident green card holder and you want to go live in another country, you may decide, hey, it'd be better off for me to go into a country that has a tax treaty because I could benefit accordingly. So that's something to be considering, okay? If you're not in that situation, yeah, you're still liable, and you're gonna have to go through all the annoying filings and hassles, etc. in that regard. Okay, so that's the first thing to be aware of. The second thing is, if you have been a permanent resident or long-term resident, what they call, for 8 of the last 15 years, okay, and then when you give up your green card, okay, you renounce and voluntarily give it up, or it could be taken from you, but in this case we're talking about voluntarily giving it up, you could be a covered expatriate. Now, I've done some other videos talking about covered expatriate and what that's all about, and some people aren't aware. So essentially this is if you had $2 million in net worth, or your average, basically your tax bill for the previous 5 years averaged out to, and there's a number that changes because it's inflation adjusted, it's approximately $170,000 a year, okay? Approximately that. Then you would be subject to an exit tax, which is a deemed disposition of all of your assets. In other words, it's as though your assets were sold and you pay a tax on the gains and then you leave and off you go. So yeah, you basically have to go through pretty much the same process as American citizens do renouncing. Not quite in terms of the actual giving it up part, but in terms of the consequences you do, and you'd be considered this covered expatriate. So if you're nearing the 8-year mark, it may be something to look at, okay? Now this goes both ways, okay? This is the thing that's important to notice. On the one hand, if you're nearing the 8-year mark, you may say, do I really want to be here? There's some urgency, some reason to get out sooner rather than later, right? On the flip side, if you're already over that threshold and you're wondering, should I get citizenship? You almost might as well in most cases, because you basically have all the negatives without the positives, okay? Now, the exception to that, the caveat I would say, is if you have to give up another citizenship, then it's like, okay, well, do you want to do that? What are the consequences, etc.? But very often it makes sense that you're going to say, you know what, I'm just going to give it up because, hey, or not give it up, I'm going to go and get the citizenship. So sometimes we talk to people and it's like, whoa, are you sure you really want US citizenship? So that's one side of it. But the other is, hey, listen, you might as well get it if you're already going to go through all those consequences. So the, I guess, takeaways from this are, number one, if you're going to be a green card holder, be aware of the consequences, that basically you're treated pretty much as a US citizen, but to be aware of this kind of tax treaty carve-out thing that might work for you, okay? Number two, if you are somebody who is a US permanent resident green card holder for over 8 years, the 8-year rule, then you need to be aware that you could be a covered expatriate, and that could have some consequences when you leave. And because of that, you may want to get out sooner rather than later. But on the flip side, if you realize, hey, I've got all the consequences, pretty much all the negatives without the positives, I might as well get the citizenship anyway if I've crossed that threshold. So those are some things. If you've got questions, put them in the comments below. And yeah, I hope it's helpful. If you have other videos you'd like me to make, please, again, make some suggestions below. And I'm going to look forward to seeing you guys on the next video.